Welcome back to Hillbilly Pillars. Just about a year ago, in June last year, Bruce Springsteen released a box set featuring 7 albums not heard before by the public. My mind was blown when I read the news, and it's something to this day that still seems to me has flown under the radar. If you would have told like 22-year-old me at some point Bruce Springsteen is going to release 7 albums, no one's heard on the same day, I would have just been like, that's going to be like the biggest day in music history. I guess it's kind of something, a comment on like modern times and streaming and all that kind of stuff. But it obviously made a lot of waves here in the vinyl community. And I really enjoyed watching people's videos as it came out and released and the excitement. I did my own. And this is a video I've been wanting to make for some time, while at the same time, I felt like it was important to give it time because I wanted to make sure I was firm in my foundations. And at this point, almost a year out, I feel confident in saying that one of these albums from this box set, INYO, is an essential Springsteen record. It is one that I have on par with his considered all-time run from Born to Run through Tunnel of Love. I think it meets those standards. It is, either way you look at it, for his career and what's considered his peak critically, I think it's his latter day masterpiece now. And I wanted to take a deep dive into it, kind of like a revisiting since it's come out. A couple other thoughts about the box set before I finish. There was 2 of the albums I think are more like just gathered songs together that don't really fit like an album format. You've got I think it was called Nebraska 83 Sessions, the first disc. That's more just like, it's great, but I don't really think that's an album. And then the last one, Perfect World, was like a hodgepodge grab here and there that was put together. It does have a similar sound, and there are a couple of his later studio albums, kind of like, which one am I thinking about? It's maybe Working on a Dream. That Hat does do some of that. It like assembles from different recording times. So I still was a little about that, about being an album. But this thematically is. And, I go back to since Tunnel of Love, since that time, my favorite Springsteen album releases have been the ones that seem to be the road less traveled. I've talked about this before. I felt like, for my own personal taste, he's Bruce Springsteen. He gets to do what he wants, and I'm a fan. But I felt like for his career and his discography, he became a little bit, for my taste, too self-aware of his role. So he always felt like he needed to answer that call of like what was happening in the country and that type of thing. And, that reflected in his work. So a lot of Return to E Street Band type of stuff. And to me, it was the side roads that were always most interesting. Joe, Devils and Dust. I like the Seeger Sessions, the release. Western Stars, I really love because that was it. He's like, I'm going to do an album of like, Jimmy Webb, Glenn Campbell type of energy music to my narrative stories. And I'm a big Western Stars fan. But this all takes me back to INYO. I have had the time now, and I believe INYO is an essential album. And I think in the nature of the way the release works, like you can't individually, I hope this is something that changes. As someone who bought the whole set, I hope you can individually just go out and buy each album from that set just as a record. However physical media you would want, if you want to get it on CD or, vinyl, that he'll eventually maybe out of a record store day thing. I hope it's not even that slow rolling. I hope at some point, a year from now or something, after 2 years, he just, okay, on my store, you can buy any of these individually. Because that, and also combined with the streaming, they're not even broken down in separate albums. It's just all one massive haul of streaming songs. I think the nature of this being an album gets a little lost. But I wanted to take a deep dive into the record to kind of, for me, he stole some of the virtues of what I consider, once again, just a really critical, important, must-have album now in the Springsteen discography. The notes in the box set and associated with it indicate Bruce was writing these songs while he was like doing the Joe tour, a lot of it, which was, solo acoustic. I'm old enough and went back far enough. I happen to have caught a couple of those shows, and they were fantastic. And so it was right around that time of the Ghosts of Tom Joad and Devils and Dust. He wrote these, and similar to Joad, they kind of reflect on like the Mexican diaspora, like the border between America and Mexico, and like those regions and the people that populate those regions. And it kind of has that same energy, but this one even more thoroughly and more distinctly has that vibe and feel, both thematically and musically, than Joe did. And yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little song for song walk through the album. There's just so much stuff I find really great, fascinating, and interesting. And if you see me looking down occasionally, I've actually brought in some notes and stuff, because I just wanted to make sure I touch the bases on this. My basic thing is like, I hope 4 or 5 people catch this video and are like, I'm going to check that album out. I've done my work here, because I just think it's great. The title track, INYO, it is like a historical walkthrough of the Southern California water wars. If you've ever watched Chinatown, it kind of gets around that. That's like the big behind the scenes driver of the drama in that movie. But you have the city of Los Angeles as it's growing at the turn of the century in the 1900s. And the obvious issue that Los Angeles had, it did not have the water to meet the capacity of the growth it wanted to experience. So it started reaching north towards the Owens River Valley. And through, as American progress looks like, there were strong-willed people, not maybe the most ethically clean people, grabbing land and doing all these kind of behind the scenes maneuvers and all this kind of stuff to make this thing happen, to build a gravity-based aqueduct that would bring the water from the Owens River Valley down to Los Angeles. And Bruce's song walks through that. It talks about Bill Mulholland and Fred Eaton, who were major players. One of them ran what would be the version of the Los Angeles Water Department, bringing that water in there. And the story is told from the perspective of someone who at first helped build the aqueduct, but then, and this is a historical thing that happened, as the water was drained from that region, that land began to start drying up, and the ranchers and farmers there protested and fought back and tried to organize, and it eventually led to a couple of times when they actually blew up the aqueduct, rewatering and like refilling their water sources there. So the narrator in the story goes for someone to help build it, using explosives to get through like a mountain to build the aqueduct. Ended up being someone who blew a hole in the aqueduct that he helped build. That's a direct line from the song. And it's just delivered beautifully. He walks through all of that, but not in a way that's too lengthy. And the final verse on this song is, I actually pulled up the liner notes because I didn't want to get it wrong. It's just such killer elite Springsteen narrative. So you walk through this whole journey of how LA gets its water and all the things that have happened. And the final verse says, "Tonight the Santa Ana's drawing west across the Mojave, blowing fire and dust onto LA County windowsills. Bill Mulholland and Fred Eaton are dead in their graves, but the Queen of Angels, she remains thirsty still." And then there's a refrain in the song that he returns to after each verse, which is, "Aren't you feeling dry, boys? Ain't you feeling dry?" And I just think it's a remarkable Bruce song and a heck of a table setter. Track 2 Indian Town. Um, a very quiet, mainly just Bruce on guitar, and it's a reflection of two young friends in like a small town in the Southwest, and it's a beautifully sparse narrative. There's a great like refrain in the song about how uh, the narrator in the song and then his friend, who was a Hopi from the First Mesa, would ride motorcycles. We'd make the run to Bullhead City, to Lawton, and back around. His friend ends up dying on the motorcycle out on a wide stretch of road outside of Indian Town, and he makes a marker where his friend died, and it's just a really beautiful ode to friendship. And then it's kind of a dark Nebraska vibe ending to the song. He gets killed. he's with someone's wife and gets busted and gets a knife, and yeah, that's how the song ends. It kind of just walks out from there. The next track, Adelita, that was the song that was released beforehand. It has like a mariachi vibe, and to me, I could understand some criticisms of maybe it's a little like borrowing too much to get that Southwest energy, but I think all the touches and all that work right for me. If you watch my channel, as a country western guy, I have an affinity for Marty Robbins Western music. So add horns and trumpets into a song, and I'm almost always in. And the song borrows from a long tradition of songs about the female. I'm going to get the soldados, I believe it was, who assisted armies during the Mexican-American War. And then I went and did a deep dive learning about this. I've learned so much from this album. And then you had like generals in the Mexican army then infighting once that was settled. And, a lot of the traditional songs take a very masculine view. It's, oh, this beautiful woman who's sacrificial to everything. But then there are some stories, a lot of these women were badasses. They would like put themselves off publicly as men and led armies, and just really interesting history. And this song, it's a little bit more balanced. It's a young Texican soldier who's fighting with Pancho Villa, and he ends up falling in love with this Adelita, and they have a battle, and he dies before she does. Well, he gets hit and he's on the ground, and Adelita's standing above her, and there's a beautiful line in there. It's like she's firing her gun cartridge till it turns her thumbs black. It's real, like, it's epic. It's an epic song in the tradition of those ballads, and I think it's fantastic. It's a really great song. That moves along track 3. The next one is a song that moved me deeply. It's the Aztec Dance. It's really heavy lyrical. There's like a lot of lyric packed into the simple melody and outline musically of the song. I think at first these are kind of like I think the album does beg for re-listens, because it's not you're not toe tapping the first time, and there are some times where I think he's stuffing a lot into the musical structures of the song, and this is certainly the case. But I don't know, maybe it's want to or whatever, but after enough listens, it all works for me. And it is a gorgeous rumination. You have a mom, and it's like her daughter and son, and it starts in like once again the Southwest, and they're going to malls to perform like a traditional Aztec dance. And then the daughter is riding with her mother, and asked her like, hey, um, in the song, she mentions the racially derogative terms are called, and she's like, "This land was once one our own, Mom, and like, how do these people feel this way about us?" And her mom goes into this historic, beautiful story of the glory and magnificence of her people from Central America before the Spanish showed up, and then those fightings, and then in the end, the culmination of all that is all of those grand tales ended up in wars and the killing of each other as people do, and those stories lay dead. And it's like in their other world they have those, but in this world, those people, I'm sorry, I get emotional, are reflected in you. That's what they have in this world. And you're only left with the feeling that, yeah, it was worth it. And yeah, I've got a lot of strong feelings about this. If you guys watch my channel, my wife and I have adopted a son. I don't want to share too much of his story. He was a safe haven baby. And the only thing we knew about his heritage to protect his mother in the situation was that his history is Guatemalan. So, yeah, the Aztec dance is beautiful. And excuse me, getting emotional about it. Next up, maybe a song that will eventually end up like if I was doing a 10 essential Springsteen songs. This is an all-time great Bruce Springsteen song. It's called The Lost Charo. It is gorgeous, and it has, once again, it has that mariachi horns in it. It has this beautiful violin intro to it, and it's swooping and uplifting. It tells the story of Charo, which was a decorated cowboy, and this cowboy ends up, it's a godmother when I die, make of my clay a jar, and when you are thirsty, drink from it. He tells the stories of his traveling and how he's hung up, the fancy clothes of the Charo and for the denim of his co-workers and the work he's done traveling in that. But God, it is a beautiful song, and I want to give credit. It's in the liner notes. I believe Adelita and this song, there are borrowed lines, or at least really heavily taken from, inspired by lines in like books that have been written. I made the notes here. Adelita was excerpts from the Mexican Corrido, a feminist analysis by Maria Herrera Sobek. And this song, the one I'm talking about now, Lost Charo, it says the song contains excerpts from Terraria Mexicana, an equestrian folk tradition, written by Kathleen Mullins Sands, as well as some lyrics based on the Spanish language poem, excuse me for mispronunciation, La Escaramuza by Delfin Sanchez Juarez. And that closes out side one of the album, and I think it is a perennially great Springsteen side. Yeah, so getting side two, this is our one venture outside of the Southwest, and it's called Our Lady of Monroe, and you are riding alongside a retired detective from, I believe it's Brooklyn, and he tells of a daughter who's moved away to Indiana, that because of his work, he was never very good at being her father, like super involved. And he is writing in the verses to this refrain where he's visiting the Lady of Monroe. And I was curious about the song, and I looked it up. And in the area, like around Monmouth where Springsteen lives, I believe it was Marlboro, New Jersey, there was a man, and I don't remember when it was decades ago, claimed that he had visions of Mother Mary when she was giving him messages, and the news got out and spread, and people started coming from all around to visit this man. He built a shrine in his backyard, and he revealed that the first Sunday of every month, he would get these messages from this vision of the Holy Mother that he received. And people would come. There were times he was a small town and would get overwhelmed. There was a couple of times at the peak where thousands of people visited during, what was supposed to be that first time he was supposed to get the message. And I just thought that was a real interesting backstory that inspired Bruce to write this song. And I think in the whole of the album, it doesn't like take you off guard because the geography is not the same, because the spirit is the same. It's kind of, this person in a faith-based way, searching for something enlightening in reflecting on the hardness of his life that was his job, and yeah, so that was Our Lady of Monroe. I'm gonna once again my pronunciations. My wife is being very good about learning Spanish. I, on the other hand, have not been great about that. So once again, excuse me for mispronunciation, but it's El Jardinero, and in parentheses, upon the death of Ramona. It tells the story of a father who has lost his daughter in a drive-by shooting, and he's a gardener. And the songs, obviously they get to me, so I'm sorry, weirdo. But he talks about loading up his truck and going out to do his work, and like in the morning, he takes her picture off the shelf, and it's a weakness he allows himself. And in his gardening at home, it allows him to feel connected to and reflect on the love that he had for his daughter and how much he misses her. It's a really beautiful song. Now, it's the same thing. This is a very slow song that is a lot of lyrics stuffed into the musical structure. So I can understand for some that can be a challenge, but I think there's enough not that. I really think it's the two songs I've mentioned that I would classify like that I think it balances out. And once you've gotten into the album, I don't notice it anymore. It's just another song I look forward to. The next track, One False Move, it was inspired and did take its title from the movie. I think it was like 93 is when the movie came out. And once again, these songs originally penned and stuff around that time. All of them except one that's still coming up, I believe from 95 to 98. Another interesting thing I wanted to mention is that I think it's a real interesting thing because you have like the nuts and bolts of these songs. And then a lot of times this producer, and I will probably mispronounce his name, but Ron INYO adds a lot of the additional music to it. So it's almost like a co-album between Bruce and this other guy, which I think is really interesting. But for what this guy brings to this album, it just, for me, it's all the right touches. But One False Move, man, I think is just a killer Bruce song. It has reflections of the song off Jode, even a couple of the same lines of Straight Time, which if you're familiar with that song, it's someone who's been in prison who's out, and it's a hard road to hoe if you've been in doing time for a long time. And there's a line in that song that's always stuck with me. It's kitchen. He's talking about his kitchen floor in the evening. I'm tossing little baby high. Mary smiles, but she's always watching me out of the corner of her eye. So there's always like that. And man, One False Move tells a story. It's once again, we're back on the border, and it's this guy, and you're brought into the story, and this is all like what's No Country for Old Men. Arthur is just escaping me. It's all like Cormac McCarthy energy. He's bringing in cocaine because he's looking to make a lot of money and get out. And the whole refrain after each verse, there's just kind of this haunting, like, there's a price to be paid for these choices I've made. And it's always, you're just one false move away. In the last verse, once again, Cormac McCarthy, it is like, this is before No Country for Old Men, but it's after, some of his, more noted works. But this last one, it just bleeds of that in the best way. And as the other verse from the album, I wanted to make sure I read to get it right. The way it goes, it sets up the final scene. Headlights flashing across my face, the sound of a pilgrim's horn fading south. I reach neath the seat in the dark, then comes that dry taste in my mouth. Above the black stars wheeling, inside's that sick, warm, sinking feeling. Taillights moving through the high desert pine. Someone's waiting in the hills neath the shadow line. You get your measure of daylight before the evening that waits. It's just one false move away. It's so haunting, and the music. It's a real, towards the end, he speeds up his strumming in it, and it really builds towards that verse, and it's cinematic and it's awesome. I really love One False Move Away. The penultimate song, See You Dad Juarez. Interestingly enough, this was the one song that wasn't from that time. This was recorded for the Western Stars album. And I think of all the tracks, it is the one that like sonically stands out a little bit because you can hear, I could hear it before I knew that, because I just really tried to go into these albums dry, just like I don't want anything other than just what my ears and heart are telling me when I first listened to them. You could hear it then. The production's a little bit different, and it has that, and especially Bruce's deep, outward singing like he has on Western Stars. But it's called See You Dad Juarez, and it's a father, and it's another father's lost a daughter story, and this is talking about he's come north. It's like a real great line. Together the drugs run north and the guns run south. But my heart bleeds there from the devil's mouth, because his daughter was lost there, and it's Give Me Back My Lost Heart, See You Dad Juarez, and it's real aching vibe song, and it works on the album, even though it's got that little bit of different song. And then the capper, a really, really fantastic closer for a Springsteen album, and that's When I Build My Beautiful House. Once again, getting back to Joda, it is kind of reflective of like Across the Border, which was kind of the emotional centerpiece of that album. And man, if you had the fortune to catch one of those Joad shows, his live Across the Border, go to YouTube and just check out Across the Border from the from a tape from the Joad era. Man, very moving. But this is it's kind of a simple prayer type of song. When I build my beautiful house, I'll build it high above this road I'll walk in shadow and doubt. There I'll build my beautiful house. Down below, nothing lasts. Love and great stone mansions turn to dust and ash. But past all this, I'll walk alone with something stronger than even my own children moving me on. And it's just a beautiful, like, determination for hope. And there's a lot of things about that in this country right now that I feel has gotten twisted and feels gross. But I don't let that beat me down. I don't let that keep me from believing in that America where someone who wants to build their beautiful house can find a place to do that if they want it. And I I think INYO is an essential Springsteen record. And thanks for walking with me along. This is something I've been wanting to do. Thanks.